have a question. It came from the internet, and it's a new environmentally friendly edition of the internet.
Yeah.
So we don't have any of that printed
Trying
stuff.
something new.
Yeah, less tree murdering. So this one's from an Ian. It says, would you guys ever consider making a consumer headphone? And if so, what would be your top 5 considerations for it? EQ balance, physical qualities, construction materials, etc. Thanks.
Ooh.
Well, thanks for the question, Ian.
We did a video like this before.
We did a video talking about whether or not we would make a lower cost consumer oriented headphone. So we'll link that in the description below. You go ahead and watch that one. A little bit involved.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll do our top 5. We'll start from number 5, the least important, and we'll work up to number 1, the most important. I guess this is from a perspective of a design consideration for a low-ish cost headphone, but that's by our standards. So it's like the few $100 to sub-$1,000-ish range.
Yeah.
So number 5, I think we all agree, is probably cost. And what do we mean by that? So most people, you see headphone on a shelf, $50, $100. So some people, that's actually kind of expensive headphone. The troubles there is a lot of times you build a headphone that's pretty uniform. It's very, very difficult to make a good headphone for $100 or so. So for us, we kind of build things the way they need to be. And cost is less of a concern. And that's the luxury that you get afforded in the higher end space. You can make stuff that performs really great, first and foremost.
A company that I could think of that's been making $100 or so headphones for a while is Grotto.
Yeah.
And they're in New York, and a lot of the stuff they do is in New York, and it's a cool company. And, and they've managed to maintain price points around there for a long time. So
if you want a $50 headphone, that's fine, but there's so many people already offering that.
Right.
I don't really see the advantage to get into that because there's so few things you could afford to do physically that it's just...
Well, that is the thing. The lower in price you go, the more cost constrained you are. That cost is the number one.
Yeah, you're worried about one screw in the thing.
Well, you're
it's so
stamping out
expensive.
parts. You have to. You're just plastic.
Right.
Mostly
It's all
plastic
injection molded plastic.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
Everything has to be very, very
a
highly
real
assemblable.
simple speaker, you can't make a planar driver for that price. You can't do it.
Yeah, if you want it to be at least semi-boutique, it's got to be in the hundreds to sub-$1,000.
Otherwise,
range.
why even bother putting our name on it? I mean,
plenty of choices in that range.
Right.
So if you want that price range, other people cover it.
Yeah.
So we figure, why bother?
Yeah.
The slightly upper range of that is a little less crowded, and I think there's enough room that you can make a really exceptional product and still have it be affordable-ish.
So number 4, going backwards in terms of priority,
materials.
What do we make this thing out of?
So this is something that we consider to be important, but in this price range, it can't really be critical. You're not making anything out of machined titanium and Inconel.
Or even machined aluminum, for that matter.
Right, you're going to have to be very careful with your material choices.
Or maybe only one machine part.
Yeah, some important part.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a hinge or something.
Because you're talking big expense to machine the whole thing like we do now.
Very expensive.
Huge. So you'd have to plastic. It has to be injection molded parts, snapped together mostly. Something easy. Maybe a few screws. Minimize the hardware.
Yep.
It's got to be easy assembly, quick.
There's a lot of different choices in plastics. There's plastics that range from exceptional to complete trash.
I don't think we'll be able to run any of them over with a Jeep.
You can make it.
You can make it like that. I'm not sure that's a great design goal.
Plastic.
Yeah, they exist.
Yeah.
Wow,
that'd be a heavy plastic headphone. You actually think you can make a headphone out of plastic you run over with a Jeep?
Mm-hmm. It would be expensive plastic though, so it probably wouldn't make sense
to be pretty thick.
Lexan.
So next up, I think probably build or like the tolerance of the parts. So we find it to be probably a bit more important than a lot of other folks, the way something's built, how it's designed, how it all fits together, and how it works. For some companies, that's a bit more of an afterthought, and I think it really matters. I really appreciate a well-designed, built product that stands the test of time.
If the tolerances are off a little bit, then things get a little noisy and squeaky and loose, or over time they might fall apart. So you do have to pay a lot of attention to detail, even though it is a lower priced product. And since you're making molded components out of plastic and so on, and these tolerances can vary dramatically as opposed to like a machined part where you can hold under a thou. Here we're dealing with molds that wear out and so on over time, or all the parts have to come together type thing. Not that that's a monumental challenge or anything, but it can be if you're stamping out parts by the thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands.
A lot of times, lower cost products have a single part that does multiple functions. And so these material choices and how they fit together are much more important oftentimes in lower cost products. Because if you use the wrong material, they don't fit together right, they wear out fast, they fall apart, they don't work right, they make noises and things like that. And that's actually pretty common on a lot of lower cost headphones.
You tend to get squeaks and all kinds of noises out of the lower end of things. And most people are, they're just used to it. That's the way it is down there. But we're not. So, yeah. You could always grease it up or oil the parts before putting them together.
Right.
Or you reduce the number of moving parts.
Yeah, right. Well, it's just kind of difficult to do, I guess, when you're trying to make this thing go together easy, because
it's a difficult trade-off. But that's one of the things that bothers me a fair bit on low-cost products. A lot of times you could see intrinsic in the design, they don't really care how long it lasts, or they don't feel they could afford to design it in a way that it lasts a long time. They have some sort of friction mechanism for supporting the headband or making an adjustable height that was going to wear or was going to fail. Or they have components in there that are non-replaceable or very difficult to service that are critical to the function of the part, and they're not going to last past a few years.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. When you get to the lower end of things, you think about it, the parts aren't made to be replaced or serviceable. It's pretty much a throwaway.
Yeah.
Usually,
once it breaks. Usually. Aside from maybe ear pads or headband, maybe a headband. Ear pads, maybe ear pads.
Maybe ear pads.
yeah. But everything else is kind of like as soon as that thing goes, piece of some plastic crack somewhere, it's basically done.
There's a lot of mechanisms like that in headphones.
Not serviceable.
They have some sort of design where something like the headband is supported by a small component, and if and when that device fails, it's very difficult to do something about it. It's very difficult to fix it. And I find that to be rather unacceptable.
Oh, I got a good example of this that I ran into not too long ago. I had a Dyson vacuum cleaner, and the little latch to open the bin, one little plastic bit broke.
The tip? Yeah,
just the tip
latches.
of it, and it wouldn't latch anymore, and now the whole vacuum's out.
I know.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
And you can't. There's nothing to fix. It's a plastic part that's broke.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you get a replacement thing?
Yeah, like the whole bin you can buy them,
Yeah.
but it's like half the price of the vacuum.
Jesus. See, that's bullshit.
Yeah,
that's kind of bullshit.
You can't even glue it in that application.
No, right? No,
because
those things.
The plastic flexes.
Yeah.
So it'll be very, very
You have
difficult
to
to make that
3D printer,
robust.
print your own replacement part.
Yeah.
Can you even pull that part out and replace it once it's put in?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can replace it, but you got to replace the entire component.
You think they'd sell just the latch, though, knowing that that's going to be a failure point,
If it fails, if you design it in such a way that that's possible, then unfortunately it's very difficult to repair.
So now you got to wrap your Dyson in duct tape, huh?
Tape, yep.
Yeah, that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
That is an issue with all the consumer-based
It is.
goods. And those are expensive, relatively expensive
pretty
toys.
Expensive.
Yeah.
But the annoying thing is, more often than not, you can design around it without really increasing cost. If you knew that part was going to be a high failure point, or what's going to stop this device from being used for many years and send it to a landfill, a lot of times you can figure out a solution that barely, if anything, increases cost by a better design. So,
But it's all about priorities at that point.
You got to think about it. It takes a lot of time to really think all these things through.
It's done, make it, let's move on.
Right. Or it's the way you've been doing it and it isn't really an issue, or the failures are uncommon, or it happens after 5 years and people say it's good enough.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Technically, actually, these things seem to have a finite life, a lot of these things, which I guess brings us back to the build quality of what we're talking about here. You can't assume this thing's going to last a lifetime. You're probably not going to hand this down to your kids. At that price range. You maybe, but you're not dealing with
a few $100 headphone
metal.
is expensive enough that I think it should last quite a long time.
Well, we could just look at history. Like, how many headphones from the 70s and 80s are still around?
Well,
Answer, not many.
Yeah.
They probably made hundreds or millions of headphones back then because it was popular, and it kind of waned for a while, And good luck. I see. I go to state sales from time to time. I don't see old headphones anywhere. So, it just shows to go, and those were consumer products, and they were, whatever they were, $100 or so, $50 to $100, and they're gone. They're all gone. So none of that stuff is timeless, and that's kind of what you look at when you're looking at the lower price ranges.
Yeah.
It's almost a disposable product.
Well, in particular, it's probably like ear pads and stuff and headbands
right.
wearing out.
They never really had replacements where they stopped making them.
That's trouble. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Essentially, that's what happened with like my vacuum. The new model came out, and then they don't even sell the old replacement parts for it.
Well, I bet even early Beach you probably can't get parts for them anymore. But then again, there's a lot of them out there, and
There's a
maybe
lot,
there's aftermarkets that make the stuff. But even
Sometimes.
then, it's got to be tough to service that at this point. I don't think anyone's bothering. What they probably just move on.
Get a new one.
Right? They know. Right? It's time to get a new one type thing. It's an upgradable path where you're like,
It's like, I guess I'm going wireless now or something.
Yeah.
Get the new ones.
Yeah.
Well, what I like to see is not necessarily a device that lasts forever, because unfortunately that's unrealistic a lot of times in lower price points. But a device that if it does fail, if something breaks on it, it fails in a way that you could repair or replace it reasonably.
That's tough to do. I mean, when something's made out of plastic, everyone knows what that's like. There are certain areas of plastic where they have to flex or whatever that you can't fix. Once
can
it
design
breaks,
around
it's
it.
just going to keep breaking.
Almost always you can
Oh,
design
yeah.
around it though.
Yeah, probably. But
And if you use the right plastics,
but see, the only way, a lot of times, the only way you know to design around it is you have to put it out there in the field and see how it breaks.
that's the
Well,
trouble.
that
You got
is
to
the
know what's going to
now,
break.
okay, now I see where they're breaking. Now you got to fix it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and maybe
It's a difficult balance.
Maybe Rev G, you might have it down where it's,
Mhm.
and that's going to take 5-6 years to iron out. So by then you got a new model. So again, they're still disposable items, right?
Kind of. It depends how cost down you do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do it so every tiny little fraction of a cent is pulled out of it, and then you're going to have failures
I think
and make
I
active
think if you made a
revisions.
headphone that was mostly plastic, and even looking at where the failure points might be, I still think you're going to find that there's a lot of ways that people will find to break them.
Yeah, people always find a way to break things.
You know,
Yeah.
and it is what it is.
You could try and minimize those.
Which brings us to the second most important thing in this.
Tuning.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
do we tune this?
Would it be different?
I don't know. Bass boost?
Mm.
It's a joke. It's an internal joke. We always
Mhm.
talk about the bass boost circuit.
Yeah.
I forgot where that started. Something about
Alex.
Cavelli.
Alex, yeah.
Alex, yeah. Maybe put the bass boost circuit in here.
Yeah. That's a deep one.
Yeah, that's really deep. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, maybe we'd have to put a bass booster in it. You know?
Well,
or like a button, bass boost button.
Yeah, a port.
you see different preferences in different price points.
Yeah.
The low end, the $10, $20 headphones, what people are looking for in there is totally different from what people want in the multi-$1,000 headphones, usually at least.
Yeah, you got to muffle the top end. Keep everything.
Yeah.
Keep away all those nasty eyes so you don't hear your shit.
Because the price determines what you're plugging it into, and the cost of the stuff you're plugging into kind of oftentimes somewhat determines the sound.
I don't know. Maybe we get the bass boost going, and maybe we kind of tame the highs, and what's left?
The mids. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what can we do with that? We could probably push some mids at people.
Yeah, but
Maybe
you
a little
want
bit
that, though?
pushy and
Yeah.
silky smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're looking for like an intimate kind of more intimate
that'd be
sound.
easy to do.
Well,
Pushing mids is easy,
is it?
especially since the whole thing's going to be made of plastic. It's do it all inherently.
Roll the highs, pump the bass, push the mids.
Push the mids.
Whole
Tune-
thing should be smooth and
Yeah.
coherent.
I think that'd be popular.
Is that what everybody's looking for?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you just made an HD 600.
Oh, there we go.
The perennial
Perfect.
fan
Well,
favorite.
so if you came up with that, so everyone else, that means we're on a good. So we're perfect there. So
Yeah.
so that's that with tuning. Tuning, we can make it anything we want, but
well,
Yeah.
yeah.
It is
that's
very
why it's called
important.
tuning.
Yeah.
And especially in lower cost headphones, there's different preferences from the high end stuff. It probably is one of the more important factors.
yeah. Which brings us to the number one thing, which is basically overall quality and resolution of this thing.
Yep.
How resolved can we make a headphone in the sub $1,000 category that matches that tuning
Well,
with
yeah.
plastic parts?
I don't know if this
that
is
are
a
injection
shocker.
molded.
Yeah. But sound quality, we consider to matter a fair bit. So that's why it's number one on our list.
Right.
Right.
That matters. If the thing doesn't sound good, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Why
Otherwise,
bother?
right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how long it lasts or what it looks like, how it works.
That's kind of our philosophy. Why
It
even
needs to
bother
sound
making
good.
it? We need to want to
Step
be able
one.
to use. We want to be able to want to use it ourselves. We want to use these things.
Mhm.
That's what we make things for us too,
Yeah.
as well as everybody else. So yeah, it's very important.
It's pretty general though, sound quality.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. It's a little generalized.
Yeah. And I don't know what kind of resolution you can get out of this thing. That would be
Hard
a
to
double-edged sword at this price point, because you're talking about pushing more information at people, but at the same time, it's not going to be of the highest quality, because everything around even the driver, like you can't make drivers like we make now with single-piece magnets and stuff like that. Would be way too expensive. You couldn't do it.
I think you need to very much look at this like a system approach. If you look at it as a headphone, I don't think you're going to get the best result, because especially in the lower price ranges, it's more critical. If you know people are probably going to be driving it on very, very high end amps, then maybe you could get away with doing just the best physically possible. But in the lower end stuff, people aren't plugging a $600 headphone into a $10,000 amp and have super duper high end gear all across the chain. So you need to know the realistic workload for this device, and it needs to work well in that. So it needs to perform in the conditions people are going to be using it in. So basically trying to get the most sound quality and the best performance you can out of it, given the constraints of the hardware that it's on.
Yeah, as much as sound quality is a priority for us in terms of resolution and so on, you'd obviously have to limit the resolution on a piece like this, because you're knowing that they're not running $10,000 amplifiers and so on.
Right.
You got to limit it, and that's okay. I mean, it's okay. You could still work on number 2 a bit, which the tonality or the overall balance of the sound of it, and then blend the resolution in as the number 1 or the sound, the HQ. Give people as much resolution as they can handle, but not too much.
Right.
It's a balance. It's a very tight balancing act at the consumer level of things. Bowers and Wilkins has fought with this for years, because, I've used to work for them 100 years ago, but in seeing how they've tuned their speakers over the years to like today, to current date, which currently, if you ask me, their whatever it is, their Diamond series is now the highest resolution speaker they've ever put out, so to speak, in terms of consumer product, so to speak, right? Even though it's the higher end of consumer products. But I've always heard how they've limited the resolution of their loudspeakers over the years, like you have. Their speaker drivers can do far more in terms of resolution, but they purposely dumb down through the crossover and systems in order to make sure that people don't get too much resolution, that they hear too much of mistakes in their systems and setups.
Well, I think this is counterintuitive, but when you say limiting resolution, it doesn't really mean that the end result is limited resolution. The goal is always to get the most resolution out of the device. But if you know what you're putting in, a lot of times actually it could sound less than stellar if you have a very, very high resolution speaker.
Like I've said before,
It'll show you all the faults.
Resolution is a double-edged sword. People think they want it until they have it. And then they realize that everything else around it sucks.
Right,
Well,
and maybe it's too much.
It depends on the recording, obviously, too, still. But I think at least everybody's moving towards, higher quality lossless music. So that's in the lower end, at least everybody's getting better source material.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's a good step in the right direction.
Right.
At least.
That allows us to actually offer more resolution out of the headphone, because now the source material is of a higher quality.
It does, yeah.
I mean,
So you can step up.
You have to start there, right?
Right.
The source is,
garbage in, garbage out
Yeah.
is the saying.
I think that's a fair point, because I don't think the average person would recognize that it's pretty common for people to understand how the device is going to be used and try to anticipate the needs. So in something like a headphone, if you know that there's a huge number of people that now have access to better quality audio, you may be more likely to try to push higher resolution in your product.
Yeah.
You may be more likely to try to design a higher quality product because you think people are going to actually be able to utilize it.
Yeah, and by the same token, those people that are now getting the higher resolution are going to be looking for higher quality products.
Yep.
We just happen to have those things right now.
How convenient.
Available right now today.
I guess like Apple in particular, since they have they're making end products and they're doing the music source side, they want their products to keep sounding better, right?
Sure.
Because now they could feed better quality music to people, and then
they're probably the ultimate example of a consumer-based product with a lot of tech in it, and even at their level of capabilities, let's say, call it, it's still limited in terms of the SQ, the sound quality,
very much.
And it's part done on purpose, and it's part because they can't do any better at that price range, because they're throwing their tech into the electronics, everything else, and the SQ is good enough.
In the consumer space, they make very expensive products, but when you compare it to an absolute, what could be physically done, it's limited.
Yeah.
And that's just the facts. You can always do better if you're willing to spend more, but obviously there's practical limitations. Nobody wants $1 million headphone. Well, maybe one person.
Yeah.
Most people don't really want to buy $1 million headphone.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
So there's no point.
Nor do I think we
Nobody's
want to make
making
$1
one.
million headphone.
Yeah, that would be, whew.
Well, they've tried it. They put diamonds and gold on it, but that's kind of
that's
that's kind of
meaningless.
fluffing up.
Right.
It's like, making
Yeah.
a turd look better.
It's like a solid gold toilet.
Yeah, right.
Just for,
Yeah, it doesn't
just
work any
because.
better, right?
I don't even think the Saudis are buying gold toilets anymore. I think that's all gone now.
Hmm.
They're building massive skyscrapers.
I think that's a little extra.
All right.
Yeah, I would go for more of the functional toilet
Yeah.
that has a good performance,
Good performance.
general
Color-
aesthetics.
With a bidet on it, is it bidet? Yeah. You got to get the butt washer option.
Yeah, of
that's
course.
That's good
Of
stuff.
course.
Yeah.
Yes, $15,000 Japanese toilets.
Oh, those are
Yeah.
nice, man.
Uh-huh.
You got to admit, they're
They are,
stylish.
they are nice.
Yeah.
They're pretty stylish as
Yeah.
far as toilets
I think,
go.
I've seen more and more newer builds now. Homes, I think they're starting to go that way a little bit. They're starting to they're paying more attention to the upper end of things.
Mm.
Well,
Your Totos and your Kohlers and stuff
the
like that.
builder grade toilets that you see in a lot of new homes, they're terrible.
Oh yeah, well,
They
Yeah.
don't flush.
They don't
yeah, if
flush.
you don't spec a toilet, they'll give you whatever the hell you
Right.
want.
They
They
give you
are-
one that's
they are
$20
cheap.
cheaper.
Yeah. They are
It's a $100 toilet,
Yeah.
all day long. It's just amazing when you think about it. Talk about price points. How the hell do you make a solid ceramic piece that
It is.
big?
It's affordable.
I mean, a pot for a plant costs that much.
Yeah,
There's
they
a
the
can't.
whole
logistics.
toilet.
You got to ship
Yeah.
it, distribute it, not
Yeah.
break it.
I can't even imagine how they do that.
Yeah, it
can't
is
even
impressive.
imagine. Yeah, and it's a wonder why it doesn't flush, right?
Well,
You can't have everything.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
you want white ceramic $400 and $100, and you want it to flush.
yeah.
They're
That's
less
the
than
$300
100.
model.
They're less than 100.
Yeah.
They're like 80.
It blows my mind how they do that. It just blows my mind.
Yeah. It would cost that much to ship something
Yeah,
locally.
right? It's just the
Right.
packaging
Yeah.
alone. In the
Right.
high end, the packaging would be $20-$25 for
It
the
would
boxes.
be, yeah. They're
you
nice
know?
Yeah.
boxes because
Yeah.
they have to be.
Yeah.
Usually double wall cardboard.
Yeah.
Could be $15-$20 box.
God knows how they make that stuff.
Volume.
Volume.
Yeah.
Lots.
It's got to
of
be a
volume.
serious kiln this thing goes through,
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
you call it. Just a massive oven that these things are on a conveyor just going through, right? I don't know. One of these
I
days I'll have
guess.
to watch a YouTube video on toilet production.
Yeah.
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 Common thing for me to look at.
I have seen it.
It actually
Yeah.
is though.
Yeah. Well, as usual, start getting off topic and then it could
Totally.
go on for 40 minutes. Well, hell, an hour
4
and a half.
weeks.
Yeah, at least.
So if you like that video, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions that you want to ask us, you can email us at totl@abyssheadphones.com. And thanks for watching.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.